So what happened to Xbox? Over the last few years, interest in Xbox as a platform is a shadow of what it used to be. Ever since the 360 days, nothing has felt the same. The messaging, the direction, the games, none of it is living up to the promise that the platform once stood for. Hell, they're going on social media and they're asking developers, why aren't you making games for Xbox anymore? Even with potentially great first-party titles on the horizon, they're never at the forefront of discussion. And now thinking about it, over the last 10 years, their greatest games weren't games that they made, they were games that they bought. We're talking about a company that was once the underdog, then became the champ, and now wants to be the Netflix of gaming. And I don't think this decline in interest is going to be the death of Xbox, but I do think it's going to be the death of their platform, and I think they want that. And that's not good for us. Today, what we're going to do is we're going through the entire history of Xbox, from their highest highs to their lowest lows, to figure out where things went wrong. And this is the biggest project that I've ever done. And I would not have been able to do this if it wasn't for today's sponsor, and one that I believe a lot of people on social media could use, Delete Me. So let's talk about something really important, your personal privacy. If you've ever Googled yourself like I have, you know how much of your personal data is out there. Phone numbers, home addresses, even information about your family. As you can imagine, being a content creator, I value my privacy just as much as the next guy, and that's where Delete Me comes in, a service I personally use and trust to keep my information off the web. Delete Me removes your data from hundreds of data broker websites, those companies that are out there collecting and selling your personal information without your permission. Whether you've worried about things like identity theft, doxing, or protecting your privacy, Delete Me has your back. When I first signed up, I got my privacy report within a week, and I was shocked to see just how much of my personal information they found and removed for me. Plus, they keep monitoring and removing my data all year long. Here's the best part. You can try it out yourself. Go to joindeleteme.com/drops and use the code DROPS for 20% off. It's the easy way to take control of your personal information and protect your privacy online. Thank you to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get to it. Flashback to the mid-1990s, Microsoft is on top of the world. Windows 95 revolutionized personal computing, generating billions of dollars each month and cementing Microsoft as a software powerhouse. With 95% of home computers running Windows, the company had little reason to look beyond its software empire. On the other side of the tech spectrum, Sony dominated hardware, with their PlayStation leading console gaming and Walkman, CD players, TVs, DVDs, and VHS, all of that hardware in every home. Microsoft had no plans to join the hardware race, but within Microsoft, a small group of engineers had a different idea. A team working on DirectX, software that was designed to simplify PC game development, saw gaming as the future. They believed that Microsoft had a unique opportunity not only to make its mark in software, but also in the world of video games. Their vision wasn't about improving PC gaming, it was about creating a console that would use DirectX framework to make game development easier and ultimately lead to better games being developed. At the time, Japanese consoles made by Sega, Nintendo, PlayStation all had proprietary chipsets which required non-Japanese developers to reverse engineer and translate just to port their games to consoles. The DirectX team wanted to circumvent that process, making it where games developed on Windows would perfectly translate to this dream console with no extra steps taken. The challenge? Well, convincing Microsoft's leadership. Gaming was seen as a niche market at this time, a far cry from what it is today, and stepping into the hardware business was pretty risky for a software company. But the DirectX team really believed in the vision they had and eventually started to gain some support within the company, rebranding their project from the DirectX box to simply Xbox. However, their project still wasn't approved by Microsoft's leadership. In 1999, Sony revealed the PlayStation 2, a gaming console that doubled as a home entertainment system. With its powerful Emotion Engine chip, Sony promised that the PlayStation 2 would deliver better performance than most PCs, and then even hinted that it could render PCs obsolete. Bill Gates saw this as a direct threat, and Microsoft felt they needed to respond, and fast. It became a company-wide priority to make a video game console, which then set up a competition between the DirectX team, who already had their idea, and the Windows CE team, who had a more conservative vision for a console. But the DirectX team proposed two bold features that would set the Xbox apart. Both are now staple features in every console we have today, and that's a hard drive for game saves and faster load times, and Ethernet connectivity for high-speed gaming. These ideas were radical at the time. Less than 5% of homes had Ethernet. most were still on dial-up or didn't even have internet. Remembering back, I was making Dragon Ball Z AMVs to Offspring staring at the sun on Windows Movie Maker while yelling at my mom to hang up the phone because I was playing Neopets. But the DirectX team made a massive gamble here on the future of gaming, thinking that it would be online and using Ethernet, and they were right. Once the project was approved, finding somebody to make it was a completely different story. Most companies just laughed at the idea of Microsoft, a software giant, wanting to make a video game console. Microsoft even went and tried to attempt to buy Nintendo, hoping that they'd be able to get their hardware expertise and their game library, but Nintendo just laughed them off. I want you guys to remember this because I think it's really important foreshadowing for things we'll talk about later. Forced to build the console themselves, they pressed on, but it wasn't without internal conflicts. Executives within Microsoft wanted to install the full Windows operating system on the Xbox, a move that would have crippled the console's performance. In an act of rebellion, the DirectX team secretly stole the Windows kernel, the brain of Windows, and stripped it down to make a version of it that would focus entirely on gaming. Gates viewed this as a betrayal to his legacy, to the pride of the company, screamed at the employees for hours, calling them liars in a meeting that they now call the Valentine's Day Massacre, as nobody actually made it home to see their loved ones until later that night. Ultimately convinced that Sony was a threat to Microsoft, they caved and gave the Xbox project their full support. A few months later at GDC, they would show off their prototype for the Xbox, this giant metal X with a green reactor in the middle of it that was barely functioning, but it was able to impress the developers with its revolutionary lighting and physics-based software. While the games industry exploded with excitement over the things that they could achieve with this new hardware, they still needed to impress the people who would ultimately buy it. Now, in a bid to generate interest in gamers, Bill Gates unveiled the final Xbox hardware at CES with none other than WWF superstar The Rock by his side. As a kid, I remember this. I was dying of laughter seeing this tech geek standing next to the people's champ. But it worked. It drew a lot of attention from media and gamers alike. Everybody was interested in this new, mysterious console, and we couldn't wait to see what they would show us at E3. It seemed like it would be smooth sailing from here, but at E3, the biggest gaming expo of the year, Xbox's public debut was an absolute disaster. When they were presenting the console to gamers and media worldwide, the console refused to turn on, and all of their gaming demos, showing off all their different works in progress, yeah, they barely functioned. Most of them had terrible frame rate issues that nobody could get around. Microsoft's ambitions were mocked by headlines around the world. Newspapers, cable news, gamers, everybody thought Xbox was a joke. Despite all the setbacks, the team behind Xbox refused to give up. Their belief in the potential of the console was unshakable, and they continued forward, refining and perfecting what would be the Xbox. Against all odds, Microsoft's first console was ready to hit the market. They had survived ridicule, technical challenges, and internal resistance, driven by a team that believed that putting players and developers first was the way. There is some purity in that spark of innovation, this ragtag group of developers that have their own vision for what the future of gaming looks like. Not only seeing the trends in hardware with the hard drive, but also the internet with Ethernet. It's crazy. And I only touched on this lightly, but it was incredibly difficult for Western developers to be able to make games for the PlayStation, Nintendo, and Sega because they had to backwards engineer a lot of things. They had to hire translators to be able to understand the tools. And that took a lot of money and time away from actually developing video games. If any of you guys have ever played Final Fantasy XIV, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. When you first sign up, or even when you want to renew your subscription, there's 1,000 different websites it feels like you have to go through. Menus are hidden behind different things. It can sometimes take hours just to figure it all out. And Microsoft effectively was trying to make the one-click subscription that we see with many other MMOs and just cut through the noise and get to what matters most. They had this awesome developer-first mentality, a customer-first mentality at the exact same time, not only wanting to empower players with better hardware, but make it where developers could deliver better games much easier and much cheaper. It's so wholesome that it doesn't even sound real, but you got to understand, at this time, at this point in history in gaming, Nintendo, Sega, Sony, they ruled the industry. This was the only way for another platform to make their way through. Now, as Microsoft prepared to launch the original Xbox, they knew they needed more than cutting-edge hardware. They needed games. While their developer-first approach definitely attracted some interested studios, not every opportunity was seized. Now, this is another one of those foreshadowing moments, but one of the biggest missed chances came from a small publisher named Rockstar Games, who pitched a new direction for their PC title. Xbox passed, Microsoft executives didn't like the themes of the game and didn't see its potential, not realizing that they had just turned down what would later become Grand Theft Auto 3, one of the most transformative games in history. Despite this, Xbox still lined up some promising titles for launch, including Oddworld Munch's Odyssey and Project Gotham Racing. But the true gem of Xbox's lineup, however, came from an unexpected acquisition. Bungie, a developer known for Myth and Marathon, had fallen on hard times after a critical bug in Myth 2 damaged their reputation by deleting their users' hard drives upon installation. Xbox saw potential in Bungie's next project and took the bold step to acquiring the studio. Now, at the time, first-person shooters were largely exclusive to PC, with games like Doom and Quake thriving on mouse and keyboard setups. Many were really skeptical on whether or not shooters could work on console, where controllers just didn't have the same kind of accuracy. Halo Combat Evolved launched alongside the Xbox on November 15, 2001, and it was a gamble, but it paid off. The game's tight, intuitive controls redefined what shooters could be on consoles, establishing a new standard for the genre that we still use today. Halo wasn't just a success, it was a cultural phenomenon. Its gripping campaign and multiplayer mode, which supported LAN parties of up to 16 players, instantly created a community around the game and around Xbox. For the first time, gamers could connect multiple consoles and engage in large-scale multiplayer battles in their living rooms, in their basements, in their bedrooms. This experience wasn't about the game itself, it was about the memories that we created through shared gameplay. Halo quickly turned Xbox into the go-to console for first-person shooters. As Halo transformed the Xbox into a shooter and social console, mirroring the success of Super Smash Bros. On the N64 but to a larger scale, Microsoft was already planning its next move: online gaming. In the early 2000s, online gaming on consoles was virtually non-existent. Although the Dreamcast had dabbled a bit with online play, the experience was limited. Microsoft saw the future, and in 2002, they launched Xbox Live, a service that would forever change the face of console gaming. With Xbox Live, players could compete with others across the world, communicate through voice chat, and establish unique gamer tags that gave them their own online identity. It wasn't just a platform for playing games, it was a social experience, one that paved the way for many of the global gaming communities that we have today. Games like Mech Assault and Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon were among the first to be on Xbox Live with its support, and suddenly gamers were no longer limited to couch co-op, they were connecting with anyone, anywhere, at any time. While Xbox Live was revolutionary, it still needed a game that could take the full advantage of its potential, and that game was Halo 2, but it wasn't ready yet. Now, this story is relevant to points that I'm going to bring up later, but Bungie was a group of visionaries. They wanted to push Halo even further beyond what it was. But their lofty goals led to issues with quality and meeting deadlines, so they ended up asking their Xbox boss at the time, Ed Freeze, for a delay for at least a year. Microsoft executives flat out said no. Freeze argued with Microsoft for hours, however, they wouldn't budge, citing marketing needs. Eventually, they ended up giving up. However, the frustration that Freeze felt with Microsoft and their inability to grasp how important it was to give the developers their space, or how important Halo was to the future of the brand, ended up making Freeze hand over his resignation. The added time given to Halo 2 paid off in spades. Not only did it result in an exponentially better game, but the delay ended up creating a lot of anticipation around its release. Released in 2004, Halo 2 was one of the most highly anticipated sequels in gaming history, and it didn't disappoint. It sold 2.4 million copies in 24 hours, generating $125 million in sales, eclipsing every book and blockbuster movie release in history. Halo 2 was the moment that gaming went mainstream. The original Xbox's impact stretched far beyond Halo and online gaming. It created an avenue for PC games to reach consoles, helping developers like Bethesda bring games like Elder Scrolls Morrowind to living rooms. Titles like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Mech Assault, and Steel Battalion may have never found their way to home consoles if it wasn't for the vision that Xbox brought to the market. The original Xbox didn't just compete, it reshaped the gaming landscape and set the stage for modern gaming as we know it today. I have so much to say here that I don't even know where to start. I could probably make an entire video just talking about the launch of Halo 2 because that's how insane it was. It's so sad to know that there are generations today and in the future that will never experience anything like it because of digital downloads, and nobody really pre-orders or goes to launch events or anything like that anymore. That's done. It's over. It's sad. Sad reality of gaming today. But it was insane. The hype, the love, it was I don't even know where to even start with it. Everybody at school was talking about it. Everybody had it pre-ordered. Everybody already had plans of whose house we were going to first to be able to play and hook up our consoles, and who was playing with who and what teams we were on and things like that. We were all cracked out on Mountain Dew, waiting outside in the cold, sleeting rain, and it had no effect on us. Everybody was so hyped, so energetic. We could not wait to get our hands on this game. Oh, it was so good. I think I stayed up for probably 2 or more days just playing Halo, and it never got old. I can't be the only one that feels like life peaked with the release of Halo 2. It was undescribable. Undescribable. It's a travesty what Halo is today. The launch of Halo 1 and Halo 2, obviously later Halo 3 as well, they were some of the greatest moments in all of gaming. They're what created a lot of the gaming communities and what built the foundations for not only online games, but just gaming in general that we experience today. The joy that we experience from it. In a lot of cases, for older gamers, the thing that we're still chasing and trying to find, but ultimately, we probably never will again. Sad, but true. You have to keep in mind that the Dreamcast had failed. PlayStation and Nintendo already had the market cornered. It was so difficult for a console to be able to penetrate the market like the Xbox did, and while it wasn't a massive success, it was a bigger success than anybody could have ever predicted. People were still looking for a different console experience. Where are my Atari Jaguar owners out there? God, that was terrible. That controller was like this big, and it had like 20 buttons on it that had no use whatsoever. But it seemed like Xbox had such a great eye for talent. They were so ahead of their time when it came to thinking about where the market was going to be going next. And every single move they made, it felt like it was for the players. Everything they did, it felt like it was for us. Every move was perfect. And the next move they made was even better. After the success of the original Xbox, Microsoft set their sights on something bigger, bolder, more innovative. They didn't just want to compete, they wanted to change the game. That vision culminated in the birth of the Xbox 360, a console that wasn't merely an upgrade from its predecessor, but a complete reimagining of what gaming could be. Unlike the original Xbox, which had been designed from off-the-shelf components, the Xbox 360 was built from the ground up, integrating cutting-edge hardware, software, and Xbox Live into the core experience. It wasn't enough for Microsoft to stand on common ground with its competitors like the PlayStation 2. They wanted to leap ahead. The Xbox 360 was designed to be 5 to 10 times more powerful than its predecessor, a console that could not only handle the demands of the current generation, but endure for a decade of gaming. Microsoft wanted the 360 to be more than a gaming machine. They wanted it to be a centerpiece of the entertainment world. Taking cues from the rising popularity of the iPod, the 360 added multimedia functionality that allowed players to download and play music, videos, and save pictures. You could listen to your favorite songs while playing a game. An unprecedented level of personalization. The Xbox 360 felt like it was made for gamers, offering an experience that extended far beyond just playing games. I still remember how the Xbox 360's dashboard added a completely new dimension to the user experience. It may sound strange now, but back then, being able to send quick messages, play music, or multitask while you were still playing a game felt like a revelation. It was a stark contrast to the previous consoles where we simply just put in a game and played it. That was it. The Xbox 360 did everything, and for the first time ever, it felt like it was truly the future. But perhaps the most transformative experience was the introduction of achievements. Suddenly, every game came with a built-in set of challenges to complete, goals to strive for, and more importantly, a score to compete against your friends. Achievements weren't just a game mechanic, it was a badge of honor. I remember comparing gamer score with my friends, renting games just to earn achievements and climb the leaderboard. Everyone wanted the bigger number. It was one of those rare moments where a small feature added immense replayability and a social connection to gaming that wasn't there before. The Xbox 360 hit the ground running, selling 2.5 million units in the first 90 days and over 84 million units over its lifetime. The console was an instant success. A big part of that success was its timing. By releasing the console before the PlayStation 3 and undercutting its price by $100, the Xbox 360 had a massive head start, while Sony, on the other hand, was struggling with their pricing and tone-deaf messaging, famously saying to consumers that we think that you would like to work more hours to be able to buy one. Microsoft ended up capitalizing on every advantage, securing their foothold in the market, everybody was playing Xbox. There was so much going on inside the 360. Microsoft introduced the Xbox Marketplace, allowing players to digitally download games directly to their console for the first time. Although this was limited to smaller titles at first, it was mostly just indie titles, but this is the first time any console had embraced digital distribution on scale, and it popularized titles like Jackbox Gaming, Alien Hominid, Castle Crashers, and more. The real star of the show, however, was Xbox Live. Building on the foundation of the original Xbox's online capabilities, Xbox Live became the gold standard for online gaming. Multiplayer games flourished on the platform, and the social aspect of gaming reached entirely new heights. Players weren't just gaming together, they were forming communities, bonding over shared experiences, chatting outside of lobbies, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. Friends that would last a lifetime. But the Xbox 360's journey wasn't without its setbacks. One of the most infamous moments in the console's history came in the form of the Red Ring of Death. Due to rushed production, cutting-edge proprietary hardware, and an ambitious timeline, the Xbox 360 suffered from severe hardware failures. Consoles were coming off production lines in less than 5 seconds, and many of them were defective. More than 600,000 units were stored in a warehouse waiting to be fixed, while Microsoft ignored the warning signs in an effort to beat Sony to the market and release before Christmas. The result, a near 100% failure rate among all consoles sold. Almost every Xbox 360 owner experienced the Red Ring of Death at some point. It was a catastrophe. But in what would be a defining moment for the Xbox brand, Xbox responded with transparency and responsibility. They shut down production, identified the problems, and resumed manufacturing, offering no questions asked replacements and extending the warranty up to 3 years. It cost the company over $1 billion to fix, but they owned their mistake and regained the trust of their fan base. The remarkable thing is that players weren't angry at Microsoft because of the inconvenience. They were upset because they wanted to play more Xbox, and for good reason. Despite the hardware issues, the Xbox 360 thrived. The popularity of Xbox Live, the ease of development, and the growing library of iconic titles made it the platform of choice for developers and players alike. The release of Gears of War in 2006 marked a major turning point. The game was a visual masterpiece. It showcased the power of the Xbox 360, and its third-person, over-the-shoulder perspective set a new standard for the industry. It spawned countless lookalikes and iterations. If not for Gears of War, we may not have seen titles like Army of Two, Resident Evil 4, Uncharted, or The Last of Us. Then in 2007 came the release of Halo 3. The cultural phenomenon that was felt during Halo 2's initial release returned with a vengeance. In its first 24 hours, Halo 3 generated over $170 million in revenue, once again breaking the record for the biggest day in entertainment history. Halo 3 wasn't a game, it was an event, a celebration, a culmination of everything that Xbox had worked towards. I still to this day remember moments from Halo 3. I remember launch day, playing with my friends on Xbox Live, jumping into a Warthog, Halo theme kicks in, we're pinned down, low on ammo, ghosts hovering everywhere, we're out of grenades to take out the Wraiths, there's no more rocket launchers left. I gas the Warthog, fly off a cliff into the back of a Scarab, destroy the core, and jump out. Halo 3 had the power to create these insane moments that no games had. Every player has some type of recollection of the campaign that is completely different from the next player. I remember putting hundreds, hell, thousands of hours into Halo 3's PvP. I still remember the pride of earning the Hayabusa armor. It genuinely felt like gaming could never get better. The Xbox 360 era was one of innovation, community, and resilience. It's insane how far gaming went within the timeline of the Xbox 360. From the introduction of achievements to the rise of Xbox Live and unforgettable moments shared in games like Halo and Gears of War. Heck, we're not even scratching the surface of the games that came out like Fable 3, BioShock, Modern Warfare, Battlefield, and more. The console and its generation left an indelible mark on gaming history. It wasn't just a console, it was a movement that redefined what it meant to be a gamer and connected gamers in ways that were previously unimaginable. The Xbox 360 wasn't perfect. It had its missteps and its challenges, but its legacy today remains one of triumph, creativity, and unwavering commitment to the gaming community. It was more than just a machine. It was the beating heart of a generation. And I truly believe that. I really do. Go ask anybody about the Xbox 360 era, and you are sure to fill them with nostalgia. Because it's just that good. It was just that great. It had the best games, the best controller, the best console, the best online experience. Mind you, I didn't play on PC, but I was damn happy to hand that money over to Xbox after seeing what my friends on PlayStation were dealing with. I went through 12, no kidding, 12 Xbox 360s because of the Red Ring of Death. I didn't get out of the Red Ring cycle until they finally sent me I think it was Xbox 360 Elite, the black one. Every single time they would send me a console, it would come with a new controller and Xbox Live. I don't think I paid for Xbox Live or a game for years because of the fact they kept sending me all of this stuff. No company would stand up the way that Xbox did with all of their issues with quality. The Xbox 360 was just so good. And it's largely the reason why I got a job at GameStop when I was a kid, because, well, I wanted to be more a part of that community because that's what they created. That's the feeling that they created. I wanted to know and meet more Xbox 360 players. I wanted to be there for every single midnight launch and tournament, and I did, and it was great, and it was some of the best moments of my life. It was so much fun. But that's what they had to do. They had to have that developer-first mentality to fill that console with some of the greatest games and some of the best talent you've ever seen in gaming. They had to create that community experience to lift themselves and separate themselves from Nintendo and PlayStation, who had already created their own empires. That's what they had to do to succeed. And it worked because they really were doing it for us. And it was an insane experience because we knew they were doing it for us. You never felt more appreciated as a customer. But today, my friends, that is where nostalgia ends and this story turns its page. Sadly, because once they reached that peak, once they gathered that community and created that core audience, it wasn't enough. Once they tasted that success, they needed more. We weren't enough anymore. And this is where it's all downhill from here. At the height of Xbox 360's success, the brand was riding high. Microsoft had done the impossible. They had overtaken Sony's PlayStation, won over gamers, and cemented themselves as a major success within the gaming industry. Under the leadership of Peter Moore, Xbox had gone from an outsider to a titan. However, in 2007, Moore left to join EA Games, believing his work at Xbox was complete. In his place, Don Mattrick, the former CEO of EA, stepped in. Mattrick, at the helm, had a vision for Xbox that shifted dramatically, and it wasn't long before the cracks started to show. Mattrick's vision for Xbox wasn't about maintaining the momentum from the Xbox 360, he wanted to take it even further. No longer was the goal to sell 30 million units, it was to sell 300 million units. In order to achieve this, Mattrick believed that they needed to go beyond gaming and tap into a broader and more casual audience. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The shift in focus became clear when Microsoft began integrating movies and television into Xbox Marketplace. Xbox already had a pivotal role in popularizing Netflix by introducing the streaming service to living rooms across the world, but Mattrick wanted more. However, the release of the Nintendo Wii in 2006 threw Xbox off course. The Nintendo Wii introduced motion controls that were a massive hit with casual gamers and families. Suddenly, everyone from parents to kids were playing motion-controlled games. Wii bowling, you know it. And Xbox found itself on the outside looking in. Frustrated that Microsoft hadn't anticipated this trend, Mattrick pushed the company to develop its own motion sensing technology, enter the Kinect, a revolutionary device that allowed players to control games with their body movements, no remotes required. Now, while the Xbox Kinect was successful early on, selling over 6 million units in the first few months, it even found some applications in the medical field, pushing motion capture technology years ahead in development, but it failed to resonate with Xbox's core audience of gamers. This started a trend that would culminate in 2013. Microsoft and Xbox had built a loyal fan base. They had already captured a significant share of the gaming market, and they were standing toe-to-toe with PlayStation. They were poised to make a triumphant leap into the next generation with their upcoming console, the Xbox One, but what should have been a crowning moment turned into one of the most tone-deaf and disastrous reveals in gaming history.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Xbox One.
TV experience. TV. TV and movies. TV. Xbox. Watch TV. 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 Watch TV. TV. TV and TV remote.
In May of 2013, Microsoft took the stage to unveil the Xbox One. But instead of focusing on gaming, the presentation was almost entirely about movies and television. Mattrick and his team pushed features like TV integration, voice controls, and Kinect functionality, positioning the Xbox as the ultimate entertainment hub. gaming was treated as an afterthought, which left most of the core audience of gamers scratching their heads wondering what's going on. What they wanted was a gaming console, but what they were being offered was a glorified cable box that happened to play video games. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Xbox One would be sold at a hefty $499, $100 more than Sony's PlayStation 4, which launched at $399. The price hike was largely due to the mandatory inclusion of the Xbox Kinect, a feature that most Xbox fans didn't want or need. On top of this, Xbox also introduced strict DRM policies that would prevent players from trading in or sharing games with friends. And consoles were required to always be online to even function. And what was Xbox's response when players asked what they should do if they didn't have access to reliable internet?
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
It was a flippant remark that seemed to completely disregard the needs of their customers and only further damaged Xbox's reputation. Meanwhile, Sony capitalized on those missteps in a single ad, demonstrating how easy it would be for you to share games on PlayStation 4.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
When the Xbox launched in November of 2013, the damage was already done. The Xbox One cratered in comparison to the PlayStation 4, which had already became now the go-to console for gamers. In the months following, the gap between the two consoles widened, and over the course of their lifetimes, the PlayStation 4 would outsell the Xbox One 2-1. What started as a race turned into a blowout. The Xbox One's problems didn't just end with hardware and pricing issues. The company's shift away from gaming and towards entertainment left its game lineup lacking, and they totally mishandled most of their IPs. Flagship franchises like Halo and Gears of War struggled to maintain the momentum they had during the Xbox 360 era. Without Bungie at the helm, Halo 4 paled in comparison to its predecessors, and while Gears of War remained stable, it wasn't enough to carry the console. Xbox no longer was a platform known for exclusive titles. During the entire Xbox One generation, 343 Studios, who took over for Bungie, continued to fumble the franchise. Halo 4 and 5 were met with mixed receptions, tarnishing the legacy of the title. They didn't even release the Master Chief Collection, which merely was just an upscaling and re-rendering of the first Halo games, without it being a broken and buggy mess. The collection stayed in that state until Xbox released the game on PC, and then 343 went and fixed the issues. Outside of indie hits like Ori and the Blind Forest or Sunset Overdrive, Xbox failed to deliver the kind of exclusives, those must-play titles that would drive up their console sales. Meanwhile, PlayStation was pumping out critically acclaimed exclusives like Uncharted, Bloodborne, The Last of Us, and Horizon Zero Dawn. Most of the biggest multi-platform games were also available on PlayStation, making it difficult to justify owning an Xbox One, especially at its price. The Xbox One was so bad that it ruined my love for gaming at the time. They got what they wanted from me. I started using the thing to watch TV more than anything else because there wasn't anything to actually play on it in the first place. 9 times out of 10, I was playing NHL games from EA at the time, and while I'm a big hockey fan, I was just doing it to pass the time. None of their games interested me. They sucked that love for gaming straight out of me, and they did it to a lot of other people. They ruined that sense of community. They ruined that brand integrity and that loyalty that we once felt. You know, one of the things that I didn't bring up and I think is really important is that because they wanted to push the Kinect so hard, because they were so obsessed with casual audiences and competing with Nintendo and their Wiimotes, they made Lionhead Studios, the makers of Fable, work on Kinect games to the point where every single Kinect game they made came out and failed, and ultimately they shut down the studio. They were so blinded by progress and capturing those casual audiences that they forced their developers to work on games that they didn't want to the point that they had to close the studio. It's disgusting. Remember, this is a company that started out with players and developers first. See how quickly that turned. All of a sudden, that core audience wasn't enough anymore. Making a console for game developers wasn't enough anymore. Those weren't their concerns. They figured they already had that in the bag. Who needs to worry about that anymore? And the thing is, they have kept that mentality. It hasn't changed because every single time Xbox has gotten themselves into trouble, they have only tried to buy themselves out of it. Now, one of the more intriguing developments that happened during the Xbox 360 era is the introduction of Xbox Game Pass. This monthly subscription service was initially attached to your online Xbox Live account, giving you access to a growing library of first-party titles and select third-party titles. At first, the offering felt kind of lackluster because for us long-term players who have been playing Xbox for years, we already owned their major titles. However, Xbox Game Pass had an ace up its sleeve, which was day one early access to first-party games, meaning that for a modest monthly fee, players would be able to experience the major releases without spending hundreds of dollars annually and buying all these different games. Now, with the early success of Game Pass, Microsoft began to push the idea of affordability even further, and it became the central idea for their next generation of consoles, the Xbox Series S and Series X. Microsoft took a two-pronged approach. The Series S was the lower-power, digital-only console that was at an affordable price point, while the Series X was a premium gaming experience with cutting-edge performance at a higher price. This strategy was significant because it gave players options depending on their budget, and with Game Pass in the mix, the Series S became the inexpensive gateway to a vast library of games. It's important to note that during the reveal of the new Xbox consoles, Microsoft focused heavily on games and gaming experiences, contrasting the missteps that they had with the Xbox One, where entertainment took the center stage. While the Xbox Series S and Series X were still maintaining that media functionality from the Xbox One, the focus appeared to be back to where it belonged, on gaming. However, in reality, these consoles were designed with Game Pass in mind, not necessarily great games, the one thing that players wanted. Microsoft was no longer selling hardware or software, they were selling a service. The Xbox Series consoles launched the same week as the PlayStation 5 in November of 2020, but both companies faced significant production issues and availability due to the ongoing pandemic and silicon shortages. Despite these challenges, Microsoft still ended up making quite a lot of money and selling a lot of consoles because the Series S worked to their favor. It didn't use a lot of that newer technology that was going into the Series X. This gave Xbox an early edge in terms of availability. However, as the pandemic subsided, well, production ramped up, the PlayStation console started to fly off the shelves again, and Xbox's lack of compelling games became a glaring problem. While Sony launched the PlayStation 5 with highly anticipated titles like the remake of Demon's Souls, Xbox's first-party lineup was lackluster by comparison. The best game available for the Series X on launch was Gears of War 5, which had already been released in the previous generation. Once again, Xbox found itself in a position where it simply didn't have the games to compete. Microsoft knew they were falling behind in terms of exclusive titles. Their homegrown studios were struggling to produce any must-play games, and PlayStation's library was continuing to grow, and Nintendo was dominating their own market with the Switch. In an attempt to correct the course, Xbox made a bold move in 2020, purchasing ZeniMax Media for $7.5 billion. That acquisition brought with it Bethesda Game Studios, Arcane Studios, id Software, Machine Games, and Tango Gameworks, and along with them, iconic franchises like The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, and more. The ZeniMax purchase was about more than just acquiring beloved franchises. It was about fueling Game Pass. With Bethesda's catalog now under Xbox's umbrella, Game Pass suddenly became a much more attractive offer. Titles like Elder Scrolls and Fallout were huge additions to the service, bolstering Xbox's lineup at a time they desperately needed it. However, as time passed, Xbox's releases continued to disappoint. Despite the glowing additions to their studios, the games that were arriving lacked the quality or the frequency to satisfy their audience. Instead, the company's messaging increasingly centered on Game Pass and xCloud, the latter being the promise to make games accessible on any device, and I think that's their exit strategy. While these initiatives are certainly innovative and forward-thinking, they're not addressing the immediate desires of gamers. Players want games, not services. Nothing exemplifies Xbox's struggles more than the release of Halo Infinite. When Halo Infinite launched in December of 2021, it was met with mixed reception. While players definitely enjoyed the multiplayer mode during its beta phase and the campaign seemed to return to its roots with the help of Halo's original story writer, the full release was plagued with missing features, bugs, and broken promises. The game lacked campaign co-op and Forge mode, both which were staples of the original franchise, and then were turned into promises that would be a part of their live service roadmap. Players were especially frustrated by the absence of co-op because that's a standard feature that it has our fondest memories. It's the reason why we play Halo games. For a series that built its legacy on LAN parties and split-screen multiplayer, the game that popularized online gaming for consoles to not have these features is beyond incompetent. It's offensive to the fans of the franchise. Never mind the fact that they completely ignored the rising popularity of Battle Royale games. The multiplayer beta was actually the full release, and they offered one of the saddest live service packages possible. In a game where players are used to earning skins and colors through gameplay, the progression system was the battle pass. They charged outrageous pricing for color sets and armor sets. The game lacked any self-expression, something that was initially promised by the developers.
We're not going to let any other players circumvent that by purchasing it out of the storefront.
A lot of our stuff is unlocked through playing the game and only through playing the game.
How do you ruin Halo? How do you ruin one of the most recognizable and famous franchises in all of gaming? The franchise that quite literally created the modern gaming, online gaming sphere that we have today. It is what popularized online gaming on consoles. How do you let 343 do what they've done for over a decade? How do you give money to a TV studio to make a show about Halo with Master Chief crying in a shower? Naked. What's wrong with you? How are you this incompetent? I was the biggest Xbox fan. I still have a bag in my closet that I used to use to carry around my Xbox and take it to my friend's house for LAN parties or just hook up on Wi-Fi or take it on trips. I have this beautiful, absolutely beautiful Marcus Phoenix statue. Look how highly detailed and gorgeous this thing is. They don't make them like this before. Actually, they don't make them at all anymore. Don't you guys miss when we used to get things like this when we pre-ordered games? What happened to that? I'm going to blame it on Xbox. I was so over them when I saw that they released Halo Infinite without couch co-op. It was almost an expectation of mine that they would screw things up that monumentally bad. I remember watching Angry Joe review the game with his friends sitting in the background. That is so weird. That's so weird. What is wrong with you? I think that Don Matrick was a marketing hire. I think that it was a part of their executives' idea of what they wanted for the future of the brand, of the future of Xbox, was to brush away the core audience because they wanted to do what all the rest of the executives wanted to do across the entire industry, and that was chase people that weren't playing video games. Stupid. Beyond stupid. It's just like that Steve Jobs quote. It's when the marketing minds take over and the people that were making the products, your engineers, your visionaries, aren't making the decisions anymore, because those people care about the perspective of the player, the perspective of the user. They care about what kind of quality they're delivering to them. Xbox isn't interested in that anymore. They're only interested in selling a service. The Xbox Series continued to have issues with releasing impactful first-party titles ever since its launch. However, at the beginning of 2023, it seemed like the company was starting to trend in the right direction. Not only did their showcase feature titles that players could get excited for, like Starfield, Redfall, and Fable, but at the end of their presentation, they shadow dropped a game onto Game Pass called Hi-Fi Rush by Tango Gameworks, one of the studios that was acquired in their acquisition of ZeniMax. Hi-Fi Rush was an instant hit. While the game didn't break sales records, Game Pass users loved it, and it was a major success critically, a big win for Xbox, but ultimately would end with the studio being closed because even though people liked it, it wasn't enough from the perspective of Xbox's sales projections. Xbox's next release would come in the form of one of the most confusing and garbage releases we've seen in modern gaming, Redfall, a co-op live service looter shooter made by Arcane Studios who's critically acclaimed for their single-player Sims, and it flopped. The game was broken, buggy, unentertaining, and ultimately yielded nothing in sales as players weren't interested in it. The game was developed under Xbox. They asked Arcane to make a live service game. The studio could barely hold any employees because nobody wanted to work on the game, and ultimately Xbox's pressure led to an unimaginative, generic, sloppy mess that nobody was interested in, and as a result, Xbox closed the studio. Next came Xbox's most anticipated game of the year, Starfield, launching in late 2023 as Bethesda's first single-player game since Fallout 4 in 2015, their first new IP in 25 years. With Bethesda's huge name in gaming, fans waiting for years, still players modding and playing older Bethesda titles, Todd Howard made some bold promises about the game, and the marketing buildup just led to even more anticipation. Hell, even Baldur's Gate 3 moved their launch date to avoid Starfield affecting their sales. If they only knew. When Starfield finally released, critics gave it pretty decent reviews, but the players hated it. Todd Howard's famous quote of "It's not how you launch, it's what it becomes" highlights a mindset that ultimately leads to games like this, as Bethesda isn't too concerned about delivering a polished product on day one. Beyond the bugs, the game just simply didn't live up to expectations. The characters and the story felt dull. The exploration, a hallmark of Bethesda games, was lacking. After all of the buildup, Starfield just felt like a game that could have came out a decade earlier and still struggled to measure up to Mass Effect. With Xbox's failure stacking up, studios closing down, Xbox yet again returns to their checkbook to try to fix their internal issues by acquiring Activision Blizzard King in October of 2023. This is the biggest acquisition in video game history, and by extension, through their other acquisitions over the years, they are now the biggest gaming publisher in the entire world. The biggest impact of this purchase wasn't felt through the players, it wasn't the value they were bringing to us, it was the value that they were bringing to their shareholders, as Activision Blizzard now reportedly makes up to more than half of Xbox's quarterly revenue. I think that this is the best time to start pointing out the lagging indicators that we saw in Xbox's history, and why I think that they don't have the mindset internally to make games of value. I want you to keep in mind that this company has always had a buy yourself out of your problems mentality. They do nothing to fix their own house. Their first thought when getting into the gaming industry was to buy out Nintendo because they were having problems creating the first Xbox, and we need to be thankful that they laughed them out the door. Their studios have failed. While Flight Sim and Forza remain solid franchises, they aren't the kind of games that Xbox needs to manage. They don't need to radically change to be able to hold interest. Throw on a new paint job, send it back out there. They're effectively the same as sports games. Gears of War has held its own, but with the change in characters and identity with Gears 4 and 5, it just doesn't have the same impact as earlier entries, and to be honest with you, younger generations of gamers, I just don't think they're interested in this title. Xbox has let 343 destroy their Mario, their Sonic, their iconic mascot and Master Chief, and turn a once-beloved franchise, mind you, a franchise that created the online gaming console experience that we have today, into an obscure title that only a handful of dads care about. They drove away and closed down the studio behind Fable. The only real victories that Xbox has had is Hi-Fi Rush, a game that was in development before Xbox acquired ZeniMax, and while I enjoyed Grounded, Xbox doesn't really have a lot of influence on the direction of Obsidian. They keep buying their way out of issues and doing nothing to repair any of the issues beneath. This is a company who can't manage their own studios and only seeks to feign care for their customers and buy their way out of their problems. Just like with Xbox's recent move to rebrand 343 as Halo Studios, I don't see any reason to be optimistic. It's still the same studio, the same employees, and while the studio's leadership has changed, Xbox hasn't changed. It's still the same people who have sat there watching while the Halo franchise has devolved from an industry leader pushing the medium forward into an armchair discussion about how games used to be. And this is all because their vision has changed. It's not about the developers or the players delivering value to their customers, it's about the profits and their desperate run to become the most established games as a service company in the industry. They want to be the Netflix of gaming. They have systematically acquired some of the biggest studios in a bid to corner the market to that end, consolidating the industry to the point where we are staring down the barrel of a gaming dystopian nightmare. Game Pass is the illusion of affordability. We've all seen this play out before, and that's the reason why it bothers me while nobody's talking about this. Netflix gained market dominance because it was the most convenient and affordable option on the market. Then, as years went on, it grew in price, they gained tiers, they started putting ads into it, and Xbox is doing the exact same thing. Xbox Game Pass started out as a free option that was just included with your Xbox Live subscription. Then they came out with Ultimate, which gave you the ability to use it on PC. Now you have Xbox Core, Xbox Standard, and Xbox Ultimate, and now they all have tiered access to different games, and you can only get day one releases on Xbox Ultimate. Soon we're going to start seeing xCloud come out, and you better bet there's going to be a price hike if you want access to xCloud, so you can access your games on any device, anywhere, anytime. And then with that will come speeds and quality. You want 1080p? You want 1440p? You want 4K? Well, you're going to have to pay extra for those. That's how this works. And then they're going to start putting in ads inside of your games. And if you don't want the ads, well, you shouldn't be on standard or core. You need ultimate or mega ultimate or super mega ultimate. Those games you get to play before they're even imagined. They will continue to come out with features, come out with barriers, fabricated things that didn't exist before, and start making you pay for things that you otherwise got for free before. And ultimately, they're going to make it where by buying up all these studios and all of these publishers, it's going to be the main place to get your games. And you won't have a choice. And what if I told you that that's not even the worst part of all of this? What's worrying is what it means for the quality of games that we're going to see in the future and what kind of games we're going to even have access to. Baldur's Gate 3's lead and the owner of Larian Studios spoke to this during the debacle of Ubisoft's CEO, saying that we need to wait for gamers to get comfortable not owning their games, saying, whatever the future of gaming looks like, content will always be king, but it's going to be a lot harder to get good content if subscription becomes the dominant model and select groups get to decide what goes to market and what not. Direct from developer to player is the way. Getting a board to okay a project fueled by idealism is almost impossible, and idealism needs room to exist, even if it can lead to disaster. Subscription models will always end up being a cost-benefit analysis exercise intended to maximize profits. There is nothing wrong with that, but it may not become a monopoly of subscription services. We are already dependent on a select group of digital distribution platforms, and discoverability is brutal. Should those platforms all switch to subscriptions, it'll become savage. In such a world, by definition, the preference of subscription services will determine what games get made. Trust me, you don't want that. And he's absolutely right. In the future that Xbox desires, it's not about the needs of the audience, it's about the needs and the perspectives of their shareholders. The content people, the engineers, the designers, the developers, they aren't involved. It's marketing minds. Remember what I brought up earlier in this video. Microsoft executives passed on Rockstar's idea to revamp Grand Theft Auto series into a third-person shooter in an open-world game. They didn't see the value. They didn't like the idea. They didn't like the image that it created. In a world of subscription services, it isn't about players' tastes, it's about theirs. And that's the insidious turn that this story takes. I think that Xbox is no longer interested on competing on the level that it once did. The company's shift in priorities away from players and developers towards subscription services reflects a larger vision, the death of their console. Xbox appears content with its current irrelevance in terms of first-party releases because in their future, the console itself is no longer the endgame. Instead, they are aiming for a world where services reign supreme. This shift isn't about convenience for the customer, it's about control. It's why their games feel so soulless. It's why they lack imagination and creativity, the things that players are thirsting for. It's why their platform is cascading into irrelevance. Xbox hardware isn't what they're worried about. Game Pass reigning supreme is what they want. They no longer need to focus on quality and creativity within their games. They just have to make sure that they own more of them than their competition. They can dictate what players see, what they play, and how much they pay for it. It is the perfect world for these profit-sucking vampires that are more interested in maximizing profits than pushing boundaries and delivering great experiences and value to their customers. Worse still, if streaming services become the preferred platform like Xbox wants what they're building towards, developers are going to be forced to conform to their standards, or they're going to risk having their games never played. It's a scenario where the industry is now serving the platform, not the players. A dystopian future where creativity is taking a backseat to corporate agendas. At its core, the Xbox we once knew, pioneering, player-first, developer-first, and community-driven, is gone. The company that once stood as a beacon for innovation now aims to monopolize the industry, buying out the competition and consolidating control. Their drive for profit rather than passion now defines the brand. And in that pursuit, the soul of Xbox has been lost. The soul of the players has been lost. We're not looking at the future of gaming, we're staring at the death of it. It's a bleak outlook and likely not the conclusion that you thought I was going to be coming to, but I truly believe it. Maybe it's a bit too passionate, but that's me. I'm invested in this. It's impossible for us to ignore what Xbox and Microsoft are doing when we've already seen this play out in so many other industries. We can see the writing on the wall. We know exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, look at what they've done with the Series S and the Series X. If you want more proof that they're not working for the developers anymore, why would you make a console with forced parity between those two consoles, forcing developers to make worse games. I'm waiting. When we have developers like Sven Vinka that are pointing out why they don't want their games on subscription services and writing it out in plain English, talking about this dystopian future that they see, Xbox wonders why developers aren't making games for their console. It's because of that. It's because they see that writing on the wall. They know what you're up to. Not only are you making it more difficult for them to make games for your console because of the Series S, but also on top of that, they see the long-term effects of something like Game Pass. And the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going to go anywhere. It's up to the developers fighting on our behalf to make sure that that doesn't become the preferred platform for gaming. The more that they keep their games off of their platform, the more that they don't let these companies buy them, the better off we're going to be. But I don't know if they're going to be able to stop it. The only way that we can is make sure that we vote for our, vote with our wallets and try to stay away from these services the best that we can. But I get it. People aren't going to like that. People aren't going to want to hear me say something like that because Xbox is breaking down boundaries. They're getting rid of console exclusivity. They're sending over Xbox first-party titles to PlayStation. They're bringing them over to Steam. But what is in it for them? Well, yeah, it's a little bit of money, right? They're getting some extra sales. It makes a lot of sense from my perspective. I would rather all games come out on all platforms. But at the same time, with all of their focus on Game Pass over the last few years, that doesn't really add up. But then again, we've also heard them say on multiple occasions that they want Xbox Game Pass on PlayStation. They want it on Nintendo. Why is that? I think we all know. Activision Blizzard King isn't the end. They're just going to wait till the tides roll back a little bit. Wait for the FTC to get off their back, for the folks over in, Europe to not be paying attention to their moves, and they'll just pick up another little studio here and another one right here, and then, oh, this company's going out of business. Well, we're going to help them out. And there you go. And ultimately, what they can do at one point in time is just not sell their games on other platforms or not sell static versions of their games, and everything's more available on Xbox Game Pass. And heck, right now, it's only $20 a month. That's not bad. Fast forward another 10 years, and I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a lot more. It's sad to see that one of the companies that held the most promise, that gave some of us the best memories we have in gaming, that helped build the gaming industry into what it is today, especially with online gaming and first-person shooters, is actually the company that's trying to erode our hobby and try to destroy what autonomy these developers and even the players have with the choice in platform or choice in games that we buy. But that's where the story leads. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bro, I am so hungry. I've been recording for like 6 hours. I had so many retakes on this one. I really appreciate you guys if you made it this far into it. I've never made a video this long. I have no idea how this video is going to do. I hope it does well. I invested a lot of time into it. If it doesn't, this will probably be the last time you see an hour-long video from me. It'll probably be an hour long. Actually, I have no idea how long it's going to be. I'll find out in editing. Oh, God, I still have to edit. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with other people, force other people to listen to it. Pay attention to these things when you see them out in the industry today. And that's about it. Outside of that, my friends, I got to eat some food. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Thank you guys for watching this long. Catch me live on Twitch if you guys... What is that? Somebody subscribe to my YouTube channel? What is that? Anyway, see you guys later. Peace.
Family, 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 family.
Huge thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video. If you want to have your data removed from the web, hit the link in the description below, and don't forget to use code DROPS for that sweet 20% discount. Man, I got a really cool discount code.